The glass door of Rose's diner burst open at 3:22 in the morning. Rain poured in with her, cold October rain that smelled like rust and pavement. Mia Morales stumbled through the threshold, 29 years old but looking 40, her dark hair plastered to a face so pale it seemed to glow under the neon signs. Her grey delivery uniform hung torn at the shoulder, and blood dripped from the wound there, dark and wet, falling onto the black and white checkered floor like a rhythm nobody wanted to hear. The diner was nearly empty. Just the hum of the refrigerator in the corner. Just the soft buzz of vintage pink and blue neon signs reflecting off chrome and plastic booths. Just the smell of stale coffee and burnt toast hanging in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. In the corner booth sat a man who did not belong in a place like this. Luca Valenti was 38 years old, 6'2", with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of everything dark in this city. His black suit was tailored so precisely it cost more than Mia made in 4 months. His white dress shirt lay open at the throat, revealing a chest scarred with a thin line running from his collarbone down, a map of violence written in his own skin. Dark hair, silvered at the temples. Dark eyes that missed nothing, that saw everything, that burned like coals left in a fire too long. On his left wrist, a gold watch. On his right hand, silver rings on 3 fingers. He sat alone, completely alone, with a single espresso cup in front of him, untouched, growing cold. 2 men stood at the entrance. Tony and Gino. Both wearing dark suits identical to Luca's. Both with the kind of stillness that only comes from years of standing in the presence of danger. Their hands moved toward concealed weapons the moment the door opened, muscles tensing, breathing changing, ready to kill whoever had just violated their boss's solitude. Then they saw her. Mia gasped for breath, her whole body trembling. She clutched her shoulder, her fingers pressing against the wound, and blood leaked between them like something precious and essential pouring out onto the diner floor. Her voice came out shattered, fractured, barely held together. 3 men, she whispered. On Highway 101. They were coming toward me and I couldn't let them take the boy. There was a boy in the car. A little boy with dark curls, and he was crying and they were dragging him out and I fought them. I fought all 3 of them. The diner went silent. Not the normal silence of an empty room at 3 in the morning. This was the kind of silence that happens when the world holds its breath. When fate decides to step into a place it was never invited. Luca's dark eye studied her with absolute focus. His entire body remained motionless, but something shifted in his chest. Something cold and dangerous stirred there, like a blade wrapped in ice beginning to thaw. She did not know this man. She had no idea who was sitting in that corner booth, no concept of the empire that moved at his command, no understanding that in the city of San Francisco, Luca Valenti's name was whispered in the dark and his enemies disappeared like they had never existed at all. She did not know that the boy she had saved, that small child with dark curls she had pulled from those men's grip just 20 minutes ago on the side of Highway 101, was his son. His only child. The boy he had believed dead for 4 years, stolen by his own brother, hidden away in some place so deep and cruel that even Luca's network of informants could never find him. Luca stood up slowly. Each movement controlled, deliberate, like a general surveying a battlefield. He was taller than she had realized. His suit jacket hung open, and she could see the handle of a gun at his hip, dark metal catching the neon light. "Get her to the back," he said. His voice sounded like thunder rumbling across a sky before the storm arrives. Tony and Gino moved without hesitation. They did not question. They did not ask. They simply moved toward her, carefully, like men soothing a wounded animal, and Gino's hand reached out to steady her as her knees began to buckle. "Easy," Gino said, his voice soft. "Easy now. You're safe." But Mia pulled away. She tried to stand, tried to move toward the door, her breath coming in panicked gasps. "No," she said. "No, I need to go. I need to disappear. There were 3 of them and I broke one man's nose and another one's wrist and they know what I look like now and they're going to come after me. They're going to find me. I have 72 hours. Do you understand? I have 72 hours to produce $85,000 or my daughter Emma is gone. She's going to disappear into a network and I will never see her again. The words poured out of her like blood from a wound. Like everything she had been holding inside for weeks, months maybe, was finally breaking open. Luca's entire body went rigid. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. In 15 years, Marco and Enzo, his most trusted men, had never seen him react like this to a stranger. Never seen him move toward someone in pain with anything other than indifference or calculation. But he was moving toward her now. Footsteps echoed across the checkered floor. Slow, measured, unhurried. Each step deliberate. He reached out and took her uninjured arm, and his touch was surprisingly gentle, surprisingly careful, as if he were handling something made of glass. "What is your name?" he asked. "Mia," she whispered. "Mia Morales. And I'm nobody. I'm just a delivery driver and I'm a month behind on rent and I have $5 in my pocket and a final notice letter from the bank that says my apartment is being foreclosed in 32 days and I can't let my daughter end up like this. She's only 7 years old." Luca's jaw tightened. A muscle worked in his cheek. His dark eyes moved from her face to her shoulder, to the blood dripping down her arm, to the torn fabric of her uniform. "You fought 3 armed men," he said. It was not a question. "For the boy," she said. They had the boy. Luca closed his eyes for one long moment. When he opened them again, something had shifted in his expression. Something had broken open. When he spoke again, his voice sounded different. Softer. Like he was speaking to her from across a distance that had nothing to do with the 3 feet between them. "Get her upstairs," he said to Tony. "Stop the bleeding. Clean the wound. Find clothes that fit her. Do not leave her alone." Mia tried to resist again, but her body betrayed her. The adrenaline was fading. The shock was settling in. Her knees buckled completely and Tony caught her, strong arms supporting her weight, and she let herself be led toward the back of the diner where a narrow staircase climbed up into darkness. She didn't see the way Luca watched her disappear. She didn't see the way his hands were shaking. She didn't see the way he pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed a number, and when the person on the other end answered, his voice was ice and fury and something else. Something that sounded like grief finally finding a way out. "I found him," Luca said into the phone. "I found my son." Before we continue, drop a like if this story is pulling you in. Share it with someone who needs to hear what happens next. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment that changes everything. And now, let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back to 18 hours earlier, to understand how a woman with $5 in her pocket and a heart full of desperation ended up bleeding in the arms of the most dangerous man in San Francisco. To understand the choices that led her here. To understand the debt that was about to consume her entire life. 18 hours before Mia collapsed bleeding onto the checkered floor of that empty diner, she sat alone in a room the size of a closet, counting money that did not add up to survival. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a crumbling building in the Tenderloin, where the walls sweated through the night and the radiator clanked like something dying in slow motion. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting everything below in a sickly yellow that made her skin look like old paper. The room held a bed, a folding table, 2 chairs, and nothing else. This was home. Mia Morales sat at the folding table at 11 o'clock at night, her fingers trembling as she arranged crumpled bills in front of her like tarot cards that could predict her future. $23. $41. $62. $78. That was the sum of everything she owned. $78 stretched across a table the size of a showbox, representing 3 weeks of tips from the diner, half a week's wages from housekeeping, money she had set aside while skipping meals so Emma could eat. Money that meant absolutely nothing. On the table beside the bills sat 2 pieces of paper that had become her nightmare made manifest. The first was a foreclosure notice stamped in letters the color of blood, final notice. The number beneath it in bold black print was $22,000. 14 days. Eviction in 14 days, and the room where her 6-year-old daughter Emma slept would belong to someone else. The second letter was worse. A debt collector's notice from a company called Hale Financial Services. The man's name was Douglas Hale. The amount he claimed she owed was $85,000. The deadline was 72 hours. 72 hours, and then Emma would be taken. She knew what that meant. She had heard the threats so clearly they had burned themselves into her memory like a brand. 2 years ago, when Emma had seized up with appendicitis and needed emergency surgery, Mia had borrowed $43,000 from Douglas Hale at an interest rate that multiplied the debt like a virus. She had made payments for 24 months, payments that had crushed her, had meant choosing between Emma's school supplies and the electric bill. But the interest kept growing. The penalties kept compounding. The debt had metastasized into $85,000, and Douglas Hale had stopped accepting partial payments. He wanted it all, and he wanted it now, and if he did not receive it, his collection agency would handle it through other means. Those other means involved Emma. That was what the text message had said, the one that arrived at 2 in the morning with a photograph attached. The photograph showed Emma's school building, shot from across the street. The message below it read, 72 hours. Then she is ours. Mia had not slept since receiving that message. She had not eaten. She had only counted money that was not enough and stared at a number that was impossible. The radiator clanked again, a sound like a hammer striking metal, and Mia flinched. She reached out and carefully gathered the bills, folding them into the pocket of her jeans. $78. It was a joke. A cruel arithmetic that left her with nothing. Behind her, on the bed pressed against the far wall, Emma slept. The girl was small for her age, her dark hair spread across a pillow like she was an angel in a painting. She wore the same clothes she had worn the day before because Mia was rationing laundry detergent. Her shoes were held together with duct tape. But when Emma slept, she looked peaceful. She looked like a child who did not know that her world was collapsing. Mia reached over and smoothed a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. The girl did not wake. Her breathing was steady and deep, the breathing of someone who trusted that tomorrow would come, that her mother would be there to greet it with her. Mia's hand shook. The next morning arrived grey and cold. Mia woke Emma at 6 in the morning, dressed her in school uniform, braided her hair, and sent her off with a packed lunch of rice and vegetables. She kissed her daughter at the door of their building, holding her tight for a moment longer than necessary, wondering if this was a memory she would need to keep alive. By 8 o'clock, Mia was standing at the gates of the Valenti mansion in Pacific Heights. The mansion was so large it looked like a hotel. 3 stories of limestone and glass overlooking the bay, with a circular driveway and black shutters. Security cameras watched from every corner. A fountain in the shape of a dolphin occupied the front courtyard. Mia had been hired 2 weeks ago to work as part of the housekeeping staff, a position arranged through a temp agency that did not ask questions about her background. She was invisible to the family that owned the mansion. That was the point. The head housekeeper was a woman named Mrs. Chen, 60 years old with grey hair pulled back so tightly it stretched her skin. She handed Mia a black and white uniform and pointed up the grand staircase without making eye contact. 3rd floor. Guest wing. The windows need washing. The silver needs polishing. There are 12 rooms. You have 8 hours. Mia climbed the staircase with her vacuum and her cleaning supplies, ascending into a world of silk wallpaper and original paintings and carpet so thick it swallowed the sound of her footsteps. She became a ghost. She moved through rooms worth more than she would ever earn, touching objects that cost more than her entire life, cleaning spaces where people slept who would never know her name. She scrubbed marble floors on her knees. She polished silver that reflected her face back to her, distorted and strange. She washed windows overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. At noon, she was given a sandwich and told to eat it in the kitchen with the other staff. No one spoke to her. No one asked her name. By 5 o'clock, her shift was over. She collected her $75 in cash from Mrs. Chen and walked back down the driveway toward the city. At 9 o'clock that evening, Mia pulled into the parking lot of quick-serve delivery. The lot was empty except for a row of battered delivery trucks, vehicles with dents and scratches and odometers spinning toward oblivion. She was assigned truck number 17, a 1998 Chevrolet with 240,000 miles on the engine. The manager barely looked at her as he handed her the keys and a clipboard with 6 deliveries marked for the night shift. She drove east through the city and then north onto Highway 101, where the traffic thinned out and the night opened up black and infinite. Rain had started falling, the October kind that came sideways in gusts, that made the highway slick and treacherous. Mia made 3 deliveries. For deliveries. 5. The rain got harder. The wind pushed the truck around on the asphalt like a hand playing with a toy. At 2 in the morning, while she was heading toward the last delivery, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A photograph attached. The photograph showed the front gates of Emma's school, the same gates Mia walked through every morning at 8:15 to drop her daughter off. The gates were shot from across the street, through rain-spattered glass, but they were unmistakable. The message read, 72 hours. Then she is ours. Mia's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Her breath came in short gasps. She tried to pull over, but the highway was narrow here, just 2 lanes going north. She slowed down, her hand shaking so badly she could barely steer. The truck's engine coughed. It sputtered. It coughed again, a sound like something choking, and then the entire vehicle lurched. The engine light flashed red on the dashboard. Mia pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires as she coasted to a stop. She sat there with her hands gripping the wheel, breathing hard, waiting for the engine to settle. She tried to start it again. Nothing happened. No sound. No turn of the engine. Just the electrical click of a battery trying and failing. The truck was dead. Mia sat in the darkness with the rain hammering against the windshield, the wipers unable to keep up with the deluge, the world reduced to streaming glass and wind, and the knowledge that she was stranded on a highway in the middle of the night with 57 hours left on a deadline she could not meet. She pulled out her phone. 1% battery. No roadside assistance program because she could not afford one. $5 in her wallet because she had spent her last cash on Emma's school lunch tomorrow. She sat there in the cab of the dead truck, listening to the rain, and realized with absolute clarity that everything was about to fall apart. The eviction was coming. Douglas Hale was coming. Emma was coming into danger, and Mia had no way to stop it. The rain fell harder. The wind screamed through the canyon of the highway. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, a pair of headlights was cutting through the storm, moving toward her with methodical purpose, the kind of headlights that belonged to a vehicle that knew exactly where it was going and why. The diner door swung open and Tony half carried her through, Gino supporting her other side, and the warmth of the place hit Mia like a physical thing after the screaming cold outside. Rose's diner at 3:22 in the morning was nearly empty. One old man at the counter nursing black coffee. Booth lights casting everything in shades of yellow and shadow. And in the corner booth, a man sat alone with a cup of untouched espresso, reading a newspaper he was not looking at, and when he heard the door he did not look up. He already knew who had arrived and why. Luca Valenti was tall, 6'2", with shoulders that filled a hand-tailored charcoal suit like a man built for power the way other men were built for breathing. His dark hair was silvered at the temples, combed back from a face carved from something harder than bone. Storm gray eyes. A scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, thin as a wire, and his hands, resting on the newspaper, were marked with rings of white gold and a watch that cost more than Mia's apartment. He rose from the booth in full long, measured strides. Tony stepped aside. Gino lowered her gently onto the vinyl seat of the booth, and when Luca looked at the bleeding shoulder, at the torn fabric of her jacket, at the shock written across her face, something in his expression shifted. Something cold became something else, something a person should never see in the eyes of a man who commanded armies. How badly? His voice was like thunder trapped in a room. Bullet graze, Gino said. She'll live. Luca pulled a first aid kit from beneath the booth, pristine, organized, the kind of kit a man with power keeps close. He examined her wound with clinical precision, his movements careful, deliberate, removing the torn fabric to see the damage. The bullet had carved a line across her shoulder like a knife through butter, bleeding but not deep. Not lethal, but close. "You're going to feel cold," he said, and his hands were gentle as he cleaned the wound with antiseptic that stung like fire. Mia gasped but did not pull away. His fingers were warm, steady, the scar on his face catching the diner light. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark, and beneath that the metallic scent of rain and the iron smell of blood, hers and his, because there was blood under his fingernails. Tony and Gino exchanged a look that lasted 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds the entire world shifted. In 15 years of working for Luca Valenti, in 15 years of watching him break men and burn empires, they had never seen him bandage a wound on another person's body. They had never seen his hands move with tenderness. They had not known he was capable of it. "What is your name?" he asked, wrapping gauze around her shoulder with precision. "Mia." Her voice was trembling like a candle in the wind. "Mia Morales. Mia Morales." He spoke her name like it meant something. Like it was important. "Why did you fight 3 armed men for a child you did not know?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tears spilled down her cheeks without permission. "Because no child should be taken," she whispered. "Because I have a daughter and I would want someone to do the same." Luca went absolutely still. His hands paused on the bandage. When he spoke, his voice was different. Lower. More dangerous. "You have a daughter. Emma. She is 6 years old. And you are here working deliveries at 2 in the morning." Mia did not answer. She pulled the crumpled letter from her jacket pocket with shaking hands and slid it across the table. The paper was worn soft from handling, from being opened and refolded 1,000 times. Final notice was stamped across it in red ink. The amount was printed in bold, $85,000. 2 years ago, Mia said, her voice barely audible over the refrigerator hum, Emma needed emergency heart surgery. $47,000. I had no insurance. I borrowed from a man named Douglas Hale. He said it was a legitimate loan at fair interest. He lied. Luca read the letter. His knuckles went white, gripping the table edge. "The interest compounds daily," Mia continued. "The original $47,000 has become $85,000. He gave me 72 hours to pay in full or he takes Emma. He runs a network. Girls disappear into it. I have seen the news reports. I know what he does." "How much time left?" Luca's jaw was so tight she thought it might break. Mia checked her phone. 1% battery still holding. The time read 3:08 a.m. 54 hours. "How much money do you have?" She emptied her pockets. $5 in coins and 2 crumpled $1 bills. That was everything. $5 stood between her and the absolute end of her world. Luca made a phone call. 2 sentences in Italian, his voice like winter. He hung up and looked at her. "The debt is handled. You owe Douglas Hale nothing." Mia recoiled backward in the booth. "Why would you help me? I am nobody. I clean your floors. You do not even know I exist. I know you exist now." He leaned forward, his storm gray eyes fixed on hers. "You saved my son. The boy you pulled from those men. His name is Marco. He is my son." The words landed like stones in still water, and the ripples spread through everything Mia believed about the world. She shook her head. "I do not understand. For years ago, my brother Dante betrayed our family. He sold information to our enemies. He tried to kill me to take control of what I had built. I had to choose between mercy and survival. I chose survival. Dante fled the country. He took Marco with him, made it look like an accident. A drowning. I have been searching for 4 years, following every lead, calling in every favor, offering every resource I possessed. For years of dead ends and false paths and the knowledge that my son was somewhere in this world and I could not find him. He paused, and in that pause the entire diner held its breath. Douglas Hale's network found him first. They planned to sell him to a rival family as leverage in a weapons deal. You stopped that. You broke his chains. You brought him back to me. Mia was crying now, completely overwhelmed, the magnitude of what she had done crashing down like a wave. She had not saved a random child. She had saved this man's world. She had brought back the thing he loved most. I will handle Hale, Luca said. You and Emma are under my protection. He will never touch either of you again. Across the city, in a penthouse suite on the 42nd floor of the Fairmont Hotel, Douglas Hale was on the phone with Margaret Harrington. Margaret was 52 years old, dressed in a designer suit that cost $3,000 and pearls from her grandmother, a woman who had made her fortune in real estate and made her power in secrecy. She was a member of the school board. A philanthropist. A donor to the children's hospital. No one who knew her would ever believe she was a silent partner in a trafficking operation that moved girls across state lines like cattle. Luca Valenti is moving, Margaret said, her voice like silk wrapped around broken glass. He is protecting the maid. Hale's voice crackled through the phone, desperate. What do we do? We destroy her another way, Margaret said. We make her life so unbearable she runs. We take what she loves most. We do not need to touch the daughter. We just need to make sure she loses custody. She hung up the phone and smiled. At dawn, Mia returned to her apartment to find Emma asleep in the neighbor's spare bed, safe, untouched. She held her daughter and wept until there was nothing left inside her but gratitude. At noon, she reported for her shift at the Valenti mansion. She was still wearing bandages beneath her maid's uniform, but the work kept her moving, kept her from falling apart. Mrs. Chen, the head of household staff, assigned her to clean the main study. While dusting the mahogany desk, Mia saw the photographs. A small boy with dark curls, age 2, laughing at something. Marco at 3, holding a toy car. Marco at 4, his father's eyes already visible in his face. That evening, a black car pulled up outside Emma's school. The principal called Mia in. Mrs. Foster's office smelled like furniture polish and anxiety. Sitting across from the principal's desk was Margaret Harrington, wearing her philanthropist smile, the one she practiced in mirrors. Ms. Morales, Margaret said, standing to shake her hand. Her grip was cold. I am so glad we could meet. We have received some concerning reports about Emma's home situation. Mia's stomach dropped. What kind of reports? Neglect. Supervision concerns. A 6-year-old being left alone in the evenings while her mother works. A pattern of inconsistent care. That is not true, Mia said, her voice shaking. I work because I have to work. Every penny goes to keeping Emma safe and fed and in this school. I would never leave her alone. 2 jobs? Margaret's eyebrow arched delicately. So she is unsupervised at night. The principal looked uncomfortable but nodded. We have a duty to report these concerns to Child Protective Services. Mia was escorted from the building. Emma's enrollment was now under review pending an investigation. She sat in her truck in the parking lot, shaking with rage and fear, not knowing that across the street, in a coffee shop window, Tony was watching everything. He was watching Margaret Harrington leave the school, smoothing her suit, checking her reflection in her phone. He was watching Mia break. And he was already calling Luca. The apartment was silent except for the sound of water running in the sink. Mia scrubbed her hands until the flesh turned red, until blood mixed with the soapy water, but she could not get clean. The home inspection was in 48 hours. Every corner of her small space had to be perfect. Every surface had to shine. Every shadow had to vanish. Emma slept on a mattress in the next room, unaware that the walls around her were closing in. At the mansion, Margaret Harrington arrived at noon wearing Chanel and a smile that could cut glass. She found Mia in the hallway near the study, arms full of fresh linens. Margaret stepped directly into her path. Her heels clicked against the marble floor like a countdown timer. "You think this ends well for you?" Margaret said, her voice low and coated in honey and venom. "You think Luca Valenti cares about a maid? About a single mother with nothing? He collects broken things sometimes. Charity projects. But he will tire of you. He always does. And when he does, I will be there to finish what Douglas started." Mia's hands trembled. The linens nearly slipped from her arms. Margaret stepped closer. Her perfume smelled like money and corruption. "Douglas Hale pays me very well to protect his interests. And you, Ms. Morales, have become a significant problem. Emma will end up in the system where children like her belong. And there is nothing you can do to stop me." Mia's voice came out steady, though her legs felt like they might give way. "Why are you doing this?" Margaret's laugh was like the sound of ice breaking. "Because the world rewards people who understand power. And you understand nothing." She walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hallway until they faded completely. Mia stood motionless, the linens pressed against her chest like armor that could not protect her. That evening, Mia sat at her small kitchen table with a blank piece of paper in front of her. Emma was asleep. The apartment was clean, but it did not matter. No amount of cleanliness could wash away what Margaret Harrington had told her. No scrubbing could erase the reality: she was fighting enemies with unlimited resources. Enemies who owned people. Enemies who would destroy her daughter without hesitation. She picked up a pen. Her hand shook as she began to write. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like blood from a wound that would not stop bleeding. "Dear Luca," she wrote, "I cannot thank you enough for what you tried to do for Emma and me. But I see now that staying near you only brings danger to my daughter. Margaret Harrington has made it clear she will destroy us. I cannot fight people like her. I cannot fight this world." She paused. Through the window, the October night was dark and cold. The city lights spread across the distance like broken glass. "So I am leaving. I am taking Emma and disappearing tonight. I want you to know that in the brief time I have known you, I have seen a man of honor beneath the reputation. I have seen the way you look at your son with love that could move mountains. I have felt safer in your presence than I have felt in years. If circumstances were different, if I were someone else, someone worthy of this kind of care, but I am not. I am just a maid with $5 and a daughter to protect. Please do not look for us. Thank you for giving me hope, even if just for a moment." She did not sign the letter. Her hands were shaking too badly to write her name. She folded it carefully and addressed it to Luca Valenti in her careful handwriting. But as she stood to walk to the mailbox, Emma's voice came from the darkness of her bedroom. "Mama? Where are we going?" Mia could not answer. She held her daughter and wept into her hair, and in that moment, something broke inside her. Not her body. Not her spirit. But her ability to believe that running was anything but surrender. Across the city, in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Emma's school, Tony sat with his phone to his ear. He had been watching Margaret Harrington all week. He had photographed every meeting. He had documented every moment she spent in the presence of Douglas Hale's associates. Now he spoke to Luca in a voice that carried the weight of absolute certainty. "She is planning to disappear," Tony said. "The girl. She wrote a letter. It is on her kitchen table right now. She is going to run." Luca did not speak for a long moment. Then, with the calm precision of a man accustomed to making decisions that changed lives, he said, "Call the Russians." At 3:15 a.m., while Mia still held her sleeping daughter, while the letter sat unsigned on the kitchen table, 12 men in tactical gear moved through the darkness like ghosts. They did not belong to Luca Valenti. They belonged to Viktor Kozlov, the man who controlled the port of Oakland, who had been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. Douglas Hale was in his warehouse in Bayview. He was meeting with his distribution network, counting money, congratulating himself on his invisible empire. He did not hear them coming. No one ever does when death arrives without warning. The door exploded inward. Hale's guards scattered or fell. Men in black moved through the darkness with purpose, and Douglas Hale ran toward the back exit screaming, his silk shirt already soaked with sweat. They found him in the office. Cornered. Trembling. "Please," he gasped, his hands raised. "I have money. I have information. I can tell you everything. I can tell you about the operations, the routes, The Kozlov enforcer smiled. It was not a smile that contained kindness. "You should have stayed small," he said. "You made yourself valuable. Now you are leverage." Hale was thrown into a black van. The doors closed. The engine started. He vanished into the machinery of a darker world, the kind of world where men do not get trials or arrests or the mercy of official record. They simply disappear, and eventually, even the people who loved them stop looking. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, a different operation was unfolding with surgical precision. Margaret Harrington's penthouse was on the 42nd floor of a building that overlooked the bay. She slept alone, as always. She woke to the sound of her apartment door being opened by someone who had copied her key months ago. By the time she sat up in bed, a manila envelope had been placed on her nightstand. She opened it with shaking hands. Bank records. Photographs. Letters detailing every payment she had received from Douglas Hale's network. Images of her at meetings with men whose faces were known to the FBI. Her own signature on documents that connected her directly to human trafficking operations. Her phone rang. It was Luca Valenti. His voice came through the speaker like thunder rolling across a distant horizon. "You have 6 hours," he said. "Resign from every board. Liquidate your assets. Leave the state. Or I release everything to the FBI, the IRS, and every news outlet in California. You will spend 40 years in federal prison." Margaret's mouth opened but no sound came out. "You made a choice when you decided to threaten Emma Morales," Luca continued. "You made a choice when you decided that cruelty was a strategy. Now you will live with the consequences of that choice." The line went dead. At 6:02 a.m., Margaret Harrington's attorney released a statement announcing her immediate resignation from all positions. At 6:06 a.m., federal agents arrived at her penthouse with a warrant. By 8:15 a.m., Margaret was in handcuffs, her face pressed against the side of a black SUV, cameras flashing from every direction. Her image appeared on every news channel within minutes. The philanthropist. The charity champion. The human trafficking financier exposed. Within 1 hour, 500,000 people had seen the footage. By morning, 2 million. By the end of the week, every major news outlet in the country had run the story. Margaret Harrington's carefully constructed life collapsed like a building made of paper, and there was no one left to catch her as she fell. At Mia's apartment, the morning sun was just beginning to touch the windows when her phone rang. It was Luca. "Emma is safe," he said. "Douglas Hale is gone. Margaret Harrington is in federal custody. Your home inspection will be cancelled within the hour. Child Protective Services has already received notification that the complaint was filed by an individual with financial ties to criminal enterprises. The investigation is being closed." Mia did not speak. She could not speak. "Look outside," Luca said. She walked to the window. In the street below, black SUVs lined the curb. Men in dark suits stood on the sidewalk, facing outward, watching. Protecting. Not threatening. "You are not alone anymore," Luca said, and the line went silent except for the sound of the city waking up, unaware that everything had changed during the night. The morning sun touched the windows of Mia's apartment at 7:03 a.m. Frantic knocking shattered the silence. 3 hard raps. Then 3 more. The kind of knocking that meant the world had shifted during the night. Mia opened the door in her nightgown, hair tangled, eyes still heavy with exhaustion. Tony stood in the hallway, holding a tablet. His face was unreadable, but something in the set of his shoulders told her to look at the screen. The news footage played in perfect, terrible clarity. Margaret Harrington, the philanthropist everyone loved, the woman who had threatened to destroy Emma's future, was being led from a penthouse in handcuffs. Her blonde hair covered her face. Cameras flashed like lightning. A single word crawled across the bottom of the screen: arrested. What happened? Mia whispered. Mr. Valenti wants to see you, Tony said. That was all. That was enough. 20 minutes later, Mia sat in the back of a black SUV, still in yesterday's clothes, watching San Francisco blur past the windows. The city was waking up. People walked dogs and carried coffee cups, completely unaware that the network that had threatened to erase Mia's daughter from existence had been dismantled in the hours when most people slept. At 9:17 a.m., the SUV pulled through the gates of the Valenti mansion. Mia's hands trembled as she walked up the stone steps. Everything felt different. The air tasted different. Like the moment right after a lightning strike, when electricity still hangs in the atmosphere. Luca stood in his study, the morning light cutting through the windows in sharp angles. He was still in the clothes from the night before, the dark shirt, the expensive slacks. He had not slept. You could see it in the faint shadow under his eyes, the way he held his body like a man operating on nothing but purpose. And in the corner of the room, on the hardwood floor scattered with toy cars, Marco played. Alive. Safe. Whole. The boy looked up when Mia entered. His small face broke into a smile, the kind of smile that only a child can give, completely uncomplicated by the horrors adults understand. He held up a red toy car. I have two now, he said. This one was in the garden. Luca did not move. His dark eye stayed on Mia, reading her expression like a man reading the truth written in stone. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and solid like an oath. Douglas Hale no longer exists. Margaret Harrington will spend the next 15 years in federal custody. Emma's school received a formal apology this morning. All allegations have been withdrawn. Child Protective Services closed their investigation at 6:40 a.m. Mia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Luca extended an envelope. Heavy, cream-colored, official-looking. Mia took it with shaking fingers and opened it. The debt collector's letter. The final notice. The word that had haunted her for months. Paid in full. Stamped across it in red ink, dated at 4:17 a.m. Mia sank into the leather chair near the window. The room tilted. Or maybe she was the one tilting, her center of gravity shifting now that the weight she had carried for so long was suddenly, impossibly, gone. You are safe, Luca said. Emma is safe. Marco is safe. The men who took him, the men Douglas Hale controlled, they have been dealt with. This is finished. Mia could not speak. Speech required language, and there were no words large enough for what she felt. Relief and terror and gratitude and disbelief, all at once, like standing in a hurricane made of human emotion. Luca pulled a chair close to her and sat down. Not beside her, close enough that she could feel the fabric of his sleeve brush her arm. Marco continued playing with his cars, narrating an elaborate story about red cars and blue cars going to the beach. I owe you my son's life, Luca continued. His voice did not waver. I owe you a debt I cannot repay in any currency that exists. But I want you to understand something. I am not asking you to feel obligated. I am not asking you to feel gratitude so heavy it breaks your spine. I am asking you to choose. He paused. The silence that followed was the kind of silence you hear in empty churches. You can leave, he said. I will give you money. $200,000. A new identity. Plane tickets to anywhere in the world. You and Emma can disappear, build a new life, forget this ever happened. I will not follow. I will not ask for anything in return. You can walk away and never look back. Mia's breathing came shallow and quick. Or, Luca said, and his voice changed, dropped deeper, rougher, like a man speaking a language he had not used in years. You can stay. Not as a maid. Not as an employee. As my partner. Help me rebuild what my brother destroyed. Help me raise Marco. Help me understand how to be better than I have been. Help me become a man worthy of the one thing I have that matters. He looked at Marco, who was making car noises with his mouth, vroom, vroom, completely oblivious to the moment that was remaking the world. Mia reached into the pocket of her jacket. Her hands moved without permission from her brain. They pulled out a folded letter, the edges worn soft from days of being touched, read, refolded, touched again. The letter she had written at 2 a.m. on the roof. The letter that confessed everything. She handed it to Luca without speaking. He unfolded it slowly, his dark eyes moving across the handwriting. His expression shifted like clouds crossing the sky, confusion first, then understanding, then something raw and vulnerable, something that broke through the mask he wore like armor. He read it twice before looking up at her. "You were going to leave," he said. Not a question. Mia nodded, tears streaming. "I thought I was endangering Emma by staying near you. I thought the only way to protect her was to disappear." Luca's jaw tightened. When he spoke, his voice was rough, scraped from the inside of his throat like gravel. "You do not have to run anymore. You do not have to fight alone. Stay. Let me protect you. Let me." He stopped. Could not finish. Mia reached across the space between them and took his hand. His fingers were cold. She held them between both of hers. "I am not staying because you are protecting me," she said quietly. "I am staying because when I look at you, I see a man who has been broken and put himself back together. I see a man who loves his son with everything he has. I see a man I could love if you would let me." Luca closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they glistened like wet stone. "I found you before you could leave," he said. "I will always find you." The door to the study burst open. Emma ran in, still in her school uniform, backpack slung over one shoulder. She stopped short when she saw Luca, her small body going rigid the way children do around powerful strangers. "Emma," Mia said, and her voice held the whole world in it, "this is Mr. Valenti. And this is Marco, his son." The two children stared at each other for one long moment. Then Marco held up a toy car, the red one, the one he treasured. "You can have this," he said. Emma took it like it was made of spun glass. Within seconds, they were on the floor together, their small voices creating an entire universe of adventure and friendship and uncomplicated joy. Luca and Mia watched them. For the first time in years, both of them breathed freely. The kind of breathing that comes when you realize you can finally set down the weight you have been carrying. 6 months passed like water moving downstream, gentle, inevitable, carrying everything toward something new. Mia and Emma now lived in a cottage on the grounds of the Valenti estate, not the mansion but a house that was entirely theirs. The cottage had white shutters and a garden where Emma was learning to grow flowers. Mia no longer wore a maid's uniform. She wore tailored suits and managed Luca's legitimate businesses, sitting in boardrooms with men who had once served only criminal enterprises. They had become something else now, something stronger, because it was built on something real. Emma and Marco were inseparable. Best friends in the way that only children can be, moving together through their days at the same private school, creating games and inside jokes and the kind of bond that made both Luca and Mia understand that love was not about obligation. It was about choosing each other, over and over. At sunset on a particular evening in spring, Mia stood on the mansion balcony with Luca, both of them watching the garden below. Emma and Marco played with a soccer ball, their laughter carrying on the warm air like bells. Tony and Gino stood nearby, no longer bodyguards but family, smiling at the scene unfolding below them. Luca's arm was around Mia's shoulders. She leaned into him, her head resting against his chest. 6 months ago I had $5, Mia said quietly. And 72 hours until my world ended. I thought I was nobody. I thought I was invisible. But one night on a dark highway, I made a choice to fight for a child I did not know. That choice changed everything. Luca's hand found hers on the railing. It brought me face to face with a man who saw me when I thought I was invisible, she continued. Who gave me a choice when I thought I had none? Who showed me that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who will fight the hardest to protect what they love? The sun was lowering toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The moral of this story is this, Mia said. Do not let the world tell you that you are nobody. Do not let fear make you invisible. Sometimes one moment of courage, one choice to act when everything tells you to run, can change not just your life but the lives of everyone around you. After the rain, the sky clears. And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. Luca turned to face her. His hand lifted hers to his lips, and he kissed it, a gesture that held everything he could not say in words. Mia smiled. Finally. Completely. Home. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, like and share this video with the people you love. Every comment you leave is a precious source of motivation. We wish all of you good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace.